I've been using these screens for a couple of weeks now, and I'm actually a bit torn. Because there's something about them that just works, but there are also a few things that are a bit more troublesome than you'd expect. I'll tell you exactly what that is, but let me just start by explaining what the idea behind this monstrosity actually is. The ExtraLink Smart Life S400 are two 14-inch screens. Using them, triple the number of screens on your laptop. Quite literally, you unfold them, click them onto your laptop, and suddenly you have 3 screens instead of 1. Your laptop in the middle and a screen to the left and one to the right. The idea isn't new, and there have been quite a few of these types of products on the market in recent years. They're typically aimed at people who work on the go, consultants, people who travel a lot, and want the same multi-screen experience in a hotel as they have at home. And in theory, it's a pretty smart solution, but there are a few things you should know before you order it, and those are actually what I'll spend most of my time on in this video, because they're a bit more important than the specs. But let's just start with what's in the box. You get the two 14-inch IPS screens, a USB-C cable for connection, and a cable with 2 USB-A to 1 USB-C plug. You use the latter if your computer can't provide enough power via the USB-C port, or maybe doesn't even have one. It also comes with a USB stick with drivers, and that's very lucky because you're going to need it. But more on that in a bit. The construction itself is simple. The two screens are in a hinge that folds out on both sides of your laptop. The left screen can be adjusted from 0 to 235 degrees. The right screen from 0 to 180 degrees, so you have a lot of flexibility in how you want to angle them. The system clamps on via an adjustable holder that slides down over your laptop screen. It's not a system I'd call elegant, but it works reasonably well, at least if you have a laptop that fits. It also comes with a carrying case, and overall it weighs just under 1.7 kilos, so it's not something you throw in your backpack without thinking about it. There's quite a bit of bulk to the construction, so it's best suited for people who have a proper bag with them. But now to what I promised to tell you more about. It's about compatibility, because here there are several things that can make a big difference in whether the product even works as you expect. If you have a Windows laptop with full USB-C video output, it's pretty straightforward. You plug the USB stick into the computer, install the driver, restart, and connect the screens. By default, Windows will duplicate your laptop screen to the 2 extra ones, so in the display settings, you just need to change it so the central screen is extended instead. But then it works, at least until the next time you connect the screen. I'll get back to that in a moment. Because if you instead have a MacBook with an M1, M2 or M3 chip, which means all MacBooks launched before March 2025, well, then it's a bit more complicated. Apple has a hardware limitation in the M1 and M2 chips that means they only support 1 external screen by default, not 2. And even if you have a MacBook with an M3 chip, which officially supports 2 external screens, well, it doesn't help, because it only does that when the laptop is closed, so the internal screen is off. That means you need either a Pro or Max version of Apple's M chips, or the latest M4 or M5 models, to be able to use 2 external screens at the same time as the computer's built-in one. But how is it then that I can still use both screens? That's because you can bypass the limitation by using something called Displaylink, and it works, but not quite as well. Displaylink is a software-based solution that compresses the video signal and sends it via USB. It requires a driver and a small program that comes on the USB key, which you have to install before you can use the screens. In practice, it also means you have to run an app in the background that needs access to record your screen, because that's the way it works on Mac. Displaylink also has another consequence. On the screens running via Displaylink, the image will lag a bit. For normal office use, email, documents, browsing, and so on, it's not necessarily something you'll notice. But if you're a graphic designer working with animation or real-time video, or if you're a gamer, well, then it's a different story. There, you should keep the dynamic content on the internal screen and only use the external ones for more static windows. As mentioned, all of Apple's Pro and Max chips, as well as the new M4 and M5 models, support 2 screens directly, so there shouldn't be a need to run the Displaylink driver. But unfortunately, I don't have any of those machines myself, so I haven't been able to test it in practice. Another disadvantage, which applies whether you use a PC or a Mac, is that the computer doesn't remember the screen setup. This means that every time you connect them, you have to go into the display settings and change how they're arranged relative to each other so you can figure out where your cursor is when you move it between the screens. Normally, at least on Mac, it usually remembers the placement when it recognizes the screen, but it doesn't do that when you use Displaylink. Whether it does that on the computers that natively support the screens, as I said, I haven't been able to test that, but with Displaylink and on Windows, the placement is definitely not remembered. Every time I connect the S400, I have to go in and change the placement. And on Windows, I also have to change the setting from duplicating the main screen to extending it. It's a bit annoying. The screen quality itself is okay, but nothing more than that. Both screens have an IPS panel at 1920 by 1080 pixels and with a 178-degree viewing angle. The colors are reasonable, but the brightness is not impressive. That's perhaps to be expected when the screens get power exclusively from your laptop, so of course they shouldn't draw too much energy, but it still matters. I haven't been able to find information on how many nits the screens can officially deliver, but compared to my M1 MacBook Air, which only goes up to 400 nits, it's certainly quite a bit less. So if you're used to a screen that can deliver 400 nits or more, and which you usually run at full strength, then the ExtraLink screens will seem a bit weak next to it. This also means that in most cases, the two screens won't be able to match the brightness of your laptop screen, even if you can adjust their brightness individually. Instead, you might consider lowering the brightness on your computer so all the screens match. This also saves some extra power, which you'll likely prefer if you're on battery, seeing how much power the screens use. Furthermore, the entire setup isn't exactly easy to move around, even though the screens should fit anything from 13.3 to 17.3 inches, because you can adjust the width of the frame that sits over your laptop. But they don't quite fit my M1 MacBook Air, which otherwise officially has a 13.3-inch screen. The small tabs that are supposed to grip the bottom of the screen, they barely reach, and because the screen is so thin, they don't really get a proper grip. ExtraLink has included some small rubber spacers in the box, which they say you should use for extra thin screens. It just doesn't work very well, and since they don't stay on very well either, I think you'll lose them pretty quickly. If you have a larger or thicker screen on your laptop, it's not a problem. And even on my MacBook Air, the S400 still works, as it also has an adjustable kickstand on the back to hold most of the weight. But it doesn't feel quite as good or stable as with a screen that fits better. I mentioned the power consumption earlier, and it's quite noticeable. I have a program on my MacBook that shows how much energy the computer uses, and if I turn the built-in screen all the way up, it's between 8 and 10 watts with a few browser windows open. If I connect the S400 screens, the consumption jumps to between 21 and 23 watts, which is more than double. On a MacBook Air, you should therefore expect about half the battery life when the computer is doing light tasks like word processing and the like. If you mostly run programs that use more energy, the screen's consumption will obviously be a smaller percentage, so the extra consumption will feel a bit less. But regardless, it's not a setup designed for truly mobile use. It's more suited for a desk than for the table on a train or in a cafe. So in practice, you'll probably have the computer plugged in anyway when you're using it. At least that's what I would recommend. So what does it cost and what do you get compared to the alternatives? The S400 costs, at the time I'm recording this video, about 335 euros here in Denmark. For comparison, there are many standalone portable 14-inch screens for under 130 euros, so if you can make do with one extra screen, that might be a better and cheaper solution. On the other hand, you don't get the foldable all-in-one setup. For a Windows user who travels a lot and wants an easy triple-screen solution, the S400 is a reasonable choice. You get IPS quality, 1080p, and a solution that works with a single cable and gives you 2 extra screens with full functionality. For a Mac user, it's more of a trade-off, especially if you don't have a chip that supports 2 extra screens natively. It works, but the Displaylink solution isn't super elegant, and on my M1, there's a noticeable lag on the external screens. And if you're also used to running with the brightness turned way up on your MacBook, then the screens on the S400 feel a bit lackluster by comparison. So, what's my overall assessment? I'd say the S400 is a product that makes sense for a certain type of user, and it works as intended, but with some caveats. The construction is functional without being fantastic. The screen quality is okay, and the setup is as you'd expect on Windows, and a bit more cumbersome than you're used to on Mac. The build quality could be a bit better. It feels a bit plasticky, and I'm not a fan of one of the screens facing outwards when the S400 is folded up. It might be the only solution for them to fold out the way they do, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. On the plus side, though, it does come with a padded case. For Mac users, I wish it were more clearly communicated what the Displaylink requirement actually means in practice, because it results in a poorer experience than expected. I assume it works better if you have a MacBook that supports two external screens simultaneously with the internal one. But since that's far from everyone, quite the opposite, it should be clearer that this is a bit of a hack. If, on the other hand, you're a Windows user who maybe works a lot on the go and never feels like one extra screen is enough, and maybe you're even used to a standard office laptop where the brightness isn't that high on the built-in screen anyway, well, then the S400 is a product worth taking a closer look at. But what do you think? Is this something you could see yourself using, or is it more than you actually need? Feel free to write in the comments, because I'm also curious if those of you watching primarily work on Mac or Windows, because that actually makes quite a big difference in how much you'll get out of a screen like the S400. See you soon!